So on Monday, Christian Linke, Arcane showrunner and writer, shared a couple pictures of notes from the Arcane writers' room. And then I posted them on Twitter, and someone else shared some other notes Christian had previously shared in this German interview, and it's fascinating stuff. This is a goldmine. It really reveals some effective ways of setting up and focusing characters, episodes, and arcs so they can be written organically and powerfully. So let's go through it all. I want to start first with this whiteboard image. Most prominently in this first image is the middle section. This is what the characters want, stated simply in just a few words, but not too few. It's not like peace and that's it. It's about how this want is unique to Vander specifically. This is peace even at the expense of his reputation. Powder doesn't just want to prove her worth, it's specifically not to be the bumbling black sheep of the group. And then Vi's is a little bit more complex. She has a few different defining wants. She wants more, she wants Vander to be the man her parents believed in, and she wants a call to action for him. Above this is the past, present, and future, so to speak, of these character motivations. For the past, Vi is frustrated with a life of nothing, and she's fueled by the legends of her father, her hero. Present, Vi sets her sights on the score of a lifetime to improve her life, and then future, the consequence. This upsets Vander's balance of peace. Powder has been this bumbling black sheep. In the present, she finds valuable hexite crystals, interesting, and then as a consequence causes an explosion that puts them in the Enforcer's crosshairs. Vander, his power has been in the process of waning. Vi's heist brings the Enforcers, that's the situation now, and that forces future Vander to choose between his goals. And then finally, at the bottom we get feelings, moods, characteristics. For Vi, it's shame, frustration, pride, sacrifice. Vander has fear, humility, wisdom, and then Powder we have shame, embarrassment, need to belong, desire to be valued, seen as worthy. To me, these notes make the characters feel ready to be written. Obviously, there's more work to do, but we have the motivations, the context, the emotions that can characterize every beat, every action the characters take. You look at the way Vi climbs, even that is characterized by her desire for more. The way she fights reflects how she idolizes Vander. Even when we need her to just walk, we have a feeling we can attach to that to give it character. Even when she's just standing, you can feel her frustration. You can look at every Vander scene, either he's afraid, he's being wise, or he's being often infuriatingly humble. And by the way, these feelings build on each other. Vander is afraid of Vi's pride and rebelliousness. Vi is frustrated with Vander's humility. Powder's shame is exacerbated by Vi's pride, by her perfect sister. And her need to belong makes her mirror Vi's pride and rebelliousness.
We kicked the Enforcer's butts with just the four of us. Imagine what the whole of the lanes could do.
And this also provides very clear points of conflict between the characters. Vander and Vi obviously in terms of what they want, in terms of how they see each other, in terms of the feelings involved, but also Powder and everyone else. Powder doesn't want a better life. She doesn't want to keep the peace. Powder doesn't want Vander to be this or that. She just wants to belong. She wants her group to value her, and that little goal ends up toppling all these bigger goals of the other two characters. Not just important to know, not just important to plan, important to see clearly like this, on a big fat whiteboard in the middle of the writer's room. These are the types of key notes that inform everything. This characterizes everything big and everything small that goes into all the writing, all the scenes, all the beats. And then afterthought, we got some other stuff down here. Some of it are things to possibly characterize scenes in a similar way. Vi and Powder's sisterhood, the legends of Vander, Piltover's oppression, the death of Vi's parents, and then just random stuff, random scenes, like Echo telling Vi and Gang about Jayce. We got some opening ideas, specific shots, specific beats, that might fit in somewhere else the more the arc comes into focus. And I'll type all this stuff out, or what I can make out at least, and I'll put it all in the pinned comment below, so no need to squint at the screen. The second image was a fascinating little character sheet about Jayce. Here we see a similar sort of thing at the top. Archetype, the dreamer, want to prove he can do the impossible. Sees an arc, the loss of innocence. Jayce struggles to protect his creation from corruption, only to end up corrupting himself. These three things are not every scene, beat, line of dialogue, etc., but they certainly need to be present in every scene, beat, and line of dialogue. These characterize everything about Jayce. But then we get this little biography, which is interesting in its own right, even outside all this writer talk. Listen to this. Jayce comes from a middle-class family who control a minor house, the Talus, specializing in the manufacture of mining equipment. Jayce's parents recognized that their son was a dreamer with a brilliant mind, and they devoted themselves to nurturing his sense of discovery and wonder. To that end, when Jayce turned 10 years old, his father took him on an excursion to see the world beyond Piltover. Jayce had heard rumors that magic, real magic, existed, but he never expected to see it with his own eyes. It was during a fateful hike that the two nearly met their death. Caught up in a fierce blizzard, they were saved by a wandering mage. Jayce watched as the mage inscribed glyphs on a flat stone, summoning a mini sun that vaporized the storm. Before wandering away, the mage placed the stone into Jayce's small hands, its glyphs still showing with an ethereal light. It was at this moment Jayce realized that he wanted to create magic himself, but his father shook his head. You can't. If you weren't born with magic, well, tough shit. We get a lot of background for Jayce's dreamer identity here. Some of it we know, he's from humble beginnings. Some of it we don't know and we don't see. How his parents nurtured his potential. The background of this big trip to expand Jayce's horizons. And then there's some things that are implied. Jayce never expected to see magic. He wanted to create magic himself. Create, interesting word. But then fate withheld this from him. There's all adding color to that blinding ambition we see Jayce have right off the bat. Interesting is also we see some changes here. They apparently switch out his dad for his mom. Maybe they have other plans for his dad and what happened to him. As is in the show itself, we only catch a glimpse of him. And then a lot of people point this out. They seemingly changed what the mage did. Seems that way at least. Here it says he summoned a mini sun that vaporized the storm. In the show, it looks like the mage teleported Jayce and his mother to a non-stormy area. It's not exactly clear. I think what exactly he did is kept confusing on purpose seemingly, so it feels all mystical and magical. But we do get shots showing movement that does imply transportation. I'm wondering if there is some lore thing involving the sun that they were toying with previously. The sun is associated heavily with Piltover. We have the sun gates constructed by the Medardas, whose symbol is the sun. So maybe the mini-sun was originally to foreshadow something having to do with that, but I'm guessing they changed it to teleportation to foreshadow teleportation, which is Piltover's main use of Hextech this season. I saw some other people pointing out it's interesting that this is dated August 2018. Seems kind of late considering these changes that we saw. It means they hadn't animated episode 2 yet, or else it wouldn't say Jayce's dad. And that kind of does match up with at least one thing we do know about the timeline. KDA debuted with Popstars in November 2018, which according to Beyond the Rift was animated while the Arcane team was rewriting everything, so more or less does match up to that. Okay, next we got this one. Very similar to what we saw in the first whiteboard image about episode 1, but this one is about episode 6 and the format is a lot different. And again, we have the simply stated wants, then we have obstacle, solution, and twist. And again, this feels like characterization that needs to permeate everything. We are not just moving the plot along, every little element, beats, dialogue, should focus itself through one of these structures. Vi isn't just hurt, it's an obstacle to finding Powder. She and Kate are not just on the run from Silco, they're solving that problem through their growing bond. So again, simple, concise goals for different parts of the story. You come out with clear, focused scenes that you can color in as needed with whatever feelings, moods, themes, and you know exactly which crayons to use to color things in because you have all the goals center focused like this. And I think that's what the tracking headline section is about, where to focus specific parts of scenes to strengthen these structural identities. I also really like the concept of a twist. This term is much more vivid than like a yes but. The scene gets twisted at the end, it goes wrong somehow, comes out with an unexpected consequence. You can't just make a promise and then fulfill that promise as expected. The promises need to go weird somehow. We need unexpected elements that keep you hooked, keep things interesting, and probably the most important part of this, to generate a new promise in the moment of fulfilling your last one. Okay, now a little fun stuff, the differences here. This page was written before they came up with the Guns for Hire scene, which blows my mind. In Beyond the Rift, they talked about these big, powerful moments that they wanted, and they used those to structure the whole act around. I would have thought Guns for Hire was definitely one of those, but here we just have Kate and Vi finding Jinx's hideout and meeting her there. It's not this whole twist, actually, to end the Silco scene, and we also don't have Jinx's role in this scene, the torch. We don't have both parties acting to find each other. That makes me wonder if the torch was something they added retroactively back in Arc 1 in order to set up the scene, and now I'm wondering also if they originally had Jinx's hideout be their old childhood home instead of the weird ceiling fan laboratory thing, and if they originally had Vi coming here not to lay low but to possibly find Jinx instead of encounter Silco. That's pretty interesting. Also, they have Kate here considering going back to Piltover, and I like that they nixed this dilemma in favor of just strengthening that bond. With Kate, it doesn't seem like she would care about risking her life like this. She's driven at this point, she wants to help her new friend, and it also balances out the mood of Vi being defeatist at this point. I'm not entirely sure what this twist means in Jayce's arc. He made Hextech vulnerable. The way we have it now, Jayce is just preventing Heimerdinger from shutting things down. There's no new discrete increase of vulnerability here. It is already vulnerable to being corrupted, weaponized, could refer to that. Also, seems like the Firelights were called the Resistance at this point. Makes me wonder when the Firelights' full identity got fleshed out, or maybe at this point there's just more of a focus on resisting Silco than like living and growing their tree and stuff like that. Okay, the Arc 1 outline. This one's really cool. Episode 1 is mostly the same. The difference that stands out to me is this first line, open with adult Vi. I'm curious what the idea was there, but episode 2 is where it gets really interesting. The Jayce beats are mostly the same, but look at the Vander stuff. There's a couple major differences we got here. First, this draft has a little arc where the kids try to fix what they've done and fail. That was next. Then the biggest difference is that in the middle of this episode, Vander decides to turn himself in, and then the episode ends with him getting arrested, as opposed to middle of the episode, Vi Vander bridge convo, and then the episode ending with Vi about to turn herself in. And episode 3 begins with Vander switcheroo and Vi is unable to stop him in the basement. The problem I suspect they were trying to solve here is that this is a story about the sisters. Here we got kids see enforcers shaking up the streets. That became the arcade chase scene. The kids don't just see it, they experience it, they're involved. Instead of Vander deciding to turn himself in and then getting arrested, and then Vi's part just being watching and being unable to engage, no, now Vi is acting, Vi is involved, she's developing, she has the agency. Even in the final version of the next episode with Vander getting arrested, that feels like something that's happening to Vi. It feels like it's her fault, her thing to fix. So again, all the focus is on engaging our protagonist's agency. The other thing I see in these changes is ramping up the tension. The kids try to fix what they've done and then they fail. That's the kind of middle of the story mini arc that feels deflated of tension from the get-go. We have something for the characters to do, but it doesn't feel like things are escalating. We kind of know it's going to fail, and then failing just brings us back to square one. It's the same stakes. Compare that to chase scene, hiding from the enforcers, Vi getting arrested, all huge escalation, and the sisters are in danger here, huge stakes every step of the way. And then we end when the tension is the highest. That moment of a character choosing to turn themselves in, deciding that, and acting on it, that is when the tension peaks. Seeing it actually happen, that's devastating, and it's a big moment, but weirdly it's not as exciting, because if it goes as planned, it's just the thing happening that we were told was going to happen. And that's why Arcane does give us both. I think I made a short about this. We end at this cliffhanger moment, the moment where the tension is the highest. We're waiting for that shoe to fall, and then a different shoe falls, the Vander shoe falls. So with these two different twists, Vi turning herself in is the twist of the Vander bridge scene, and then Vander switcheroo is the twist of Vi's decision. We keep bumping the tension higher and higher throughout the entire sequence. So that's basically it for the changes we see in episode 2. Episode 3 also goes mostly the same outside of the new starting point. Vander does actually get experimented on in this version, and then Powder throws her toys in the ocean. Oh, poor Powder. I also like that they call the Hexite marbles here. Okay, final two images I don't have that much to talk about. We have a second whiteboard with a similar episode breaking, episode focusing as what we saw with episode 1. This time it's about episode 6, but it's a very similar breakdown of the structure of the beats as what we saw there. I am really curious about what meditation room means. I'm guessing it's stuff to think about, stuff to flesh out more. And then we have a pretty serious draft of the episode 1 opening, and this looks almost exactly like what we saw. The only changes that jump out to me are that Powder is humming a lullaby, but we have no lyrics yet. There's no friend across the river. And then also that we cut to Powder's eyes getting wide and saying mom. That eventually got replaced with Vi's eyes getting wide, and she doesn't say anything, and Powder has this reaction. Both of them are much more powerful in my opinion, much more in character. Subscribe, Christian Linke, if you're out there listening, or anyone else who knows Christian. Thank you so much for sharing this. Stuff like this is a goldmine. I can speak confidently for so many Arcane fans that we would love to see more of this. You talked a bit in Beyond the Rift about how hard it was to find good resources when you're starting out with Arcane, just the basics of how to turn an idea or scenes into a script, into actual writing, and I would guess this is exactly the thing I'm sure you would have loved to stumble upon when you were at that point in your arc, like notes about Lord of the Rings or Mistborn or what have you, just as another helpful tool while you develop your own methods for your own story. I think that's what a lot of people get from little nuggets like this, or the snippets from interviews we hear about your guys' writing process. So yeah, if you see this or if you hear about this, would absolutely love for you to tweet out more pictures like this. Same goes for Alex or Amanda or any other Arcane people out there. This stuff is so cool to see, it's so fun, it's so helpful. But yeah, that's it. Subscribe, support the channel on Patreon. Thanks to everyone there, and thanks for watching.